This first speaker is going to be Dr. Purohit.
Of this IABP in high risk PCI, and it will be presented by Dr. Purohit. It's a very interesting kind of topic in which exactly you would like to understand from him whether in a post in acute coronary syndrome or post MI situation or cardiogenic shock, what exactly is the utility of a conventional intra-aortic balloon pump. So Dr. Purohit, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm extremely thankful to the organization to have given me this opportunity to speak in front of this august audience. And I was asked to speak on IABP use in high-risk PCI, when to use it. When initially they told me when to use it, I was confused. I said, what is this? We all know IABP, it's an age-old thing. We all know when to use it, how to use it, where to use it. But then gradually in the course of this lecture, you will realize why was this topic given and what is its importance. IABP, as you know, it's a small balloon which is generally inserted through the femoral artery and it is kept just below the left subclavian artery. It inflates in the diastole and deflates in systole, thereby augmenting the diastolic pressure. And because of this unique property, it reduces the afterload and it improves the coronary perfusion, thereby it improves the hemodynamic stability of the patient and thereby it helps in recovery. It was first developed in 1962 and was used in clinical practice since 1968, so it's such an age-old phenomenon. So many small registries and data have come up and some meta-analysis have also come up, and this was one of the meta-analysis which was published in 2012, which was basically use of IABP in high-risk MI with or without cardiogenic shock. And what it showed us is that if you are using IABP in patient with MI without shock, the curve says that it does not favor use of IABP. But when you use IABP in patient who have cardiogenic shock, definitely it favors IABP use, you can see. So that clearly settles the issue that IABP should be used in a patient who has got MI with cardiogenic shock. And all these small registries and trial data, they led to a recommendation of class 1C in the European as well as class 1 in the American guidelines also. So, but only one thing which was confounding was, it was still not clear because doing a trial in a cardiogenic shock is very difficult. So based on this small data only, we jumped into the conclusion that yes, this is definitely going to help. But if you see here, the cohort studies of the GUSTO 1 trial and NRMI 2, it also indicated either there is no or even negative effect of IABP therapy on survival in patients undergoing early revascularization cardiogenic shock. And there was one meta-analysis by Suja et al. Which also confirmed that if you use IABP, there is no benefit. But there was a lot of criticism to that meta-analysis also. So it all confused the whole scenario, and we were confused whether we should use IABP or we should not use. I'm sorry, just come from here. So what was our expectation? We thought that probably IABP will improve hemodynamics in sick patient. Its prophylactic use can prevent deterioration of sick or unstable patient. By increasing coronary perfusion, it will limit the infarct size and thereby it will improve the mortality. And then subsequently we had 3 big trials coming up, not very big, but 3 important trials which came up in last 4 years. The BCIS 1, the CRIS MI, and the latest one was the IABP Shock 2 trial, which totally changed our thought process regarding the use of IABP. I'll go through this individually in a brief. The balloon pump assisted coronary intervention study, the BCIS 1, which was presented in 2009. This was a multi-center trial which basically assessed the use of IABP in high-risk PCI patient who had ejection fraction less than 30% and a large area of myocardium at risk. That was assessed by Jeopardy score, in which they give score to coronary anatomy, where exactly is the lesion located and all these things. And they divided patient 2 arms, 150 into the elective IABP arm and another 150 into no planned IABP. They excluded patients of cardiogenic shock. And if you can see here, the initial 30-day mortality was hardly any different between the 2 arms. But as the trial was continued and the data started coming up to 6 months, they found that the curve has started diverging in favor of IABP. And subsequently, they also had 51 month, that means almost 5-year follow-up, and here at 5-year follow-up they found that there was a statistically significant 34% reduction in the risk of death in patients who had IABP electively used. So that showed that initial mortality may not be of benefit, but long-term IABP use was definitely helpful. So in this, they concluded that bailout IABP in patients with poor LV function and severe coronary disease is definitely helpful. One more thing they found is that 12% in the conventional group, they required emergency IABP mainly because they went into hypotension. And although there was no evidence of statistical significance to reduce MACE at hospital discharge, mortality curve beyond 30 days increasingly favored the use of elective IABP. So it supports the importance of role of provisional IABP for high-risk patients prior to PCI, especially if the Jeopardy score is very high. Then came this CRISP-MI trial which was based on the analysis that probably by using IABP you can limit the infarct size. So they had a criteria where ST elevation 2 mm in 2 contiguous leads in more than 4 mm total in antral leads. And patient was planned for CBI. Again they excluded patient with cardiogenic shock. One important thing is here the patient's LV function was almost normal, mild LV dysfunction, 47% was the EF. And they used IABP in them. And you can see here the death rate was not significant whether it was IABP or no IABP, and if you see the MRI data, the infarct size was hardly different between both the groups. But the trend was that the mortality was slightly lower, but it was not powered to assess mortality, but still the trend was slightly on the better side. Clinical event at 6 months, again you can see the trend of death is slightly favoring the IABP, but again it was not statistically proven. So it all shows that if you use electively IABP in this kind of subset also, we are not going to achieve anything in terms of infarct size reduction. But one more thing here, again they found that about 8.5% of the patient in standard care group, again they crossed over as they developed cardiogenic shock or hypotension during the study. So that again brings to the same question that in the previous trial also they had a 10% people going into cardiogenic shock. Here again 10% are going into cardiogenic shock. So here the conclusion was there is no reduction in infarct size. Patients are certainly unstable and some of them can get very sick. So an analysis of who is going to deteriorate and how we might help them is very important. Then the very recent trial which was the IABP Shock 2 trial which actually changed the guidelines recently. It was basically a trial based on cardiogenic shock. So patient who had cardiogenic shock as evidenced by low BP, reuse of inotrope, congestion and urine output less than 30 ml. Again if the patient had onset of a shock more than 12 hours was excluded. So in this trial again you see 30-day mortality hardly any difference, 41.3% in control and 39.7% in the IABP use. So this was a shocking trial again for us. So it clearly shaped our convention that IABP is going to help in patients who have cardiogenic shock. But here before jumping into conclusion, let us look into what are the important things which we should not overlook. One is 30% of patients in this trial were non-ST elevated MI. Again, you had a crossover of 10% patient. Left ventricular assist device was not restricted and it was found that control group had more use of assist devices. The timing of IABP insertion was very important. It was more than 85% of patient it was used after the PCI, which is very important to note. And given that shock trial BCI was also negative at 30 days and they only became positive after 6 and 12 months, further follow up this shock trial which is a predefined secondary endpoint will be of interest to you. So before jumping into conclusion with 30-day result only, we should not remove IABP from our shelf. We should still keep it. Why I said timing is important? Because there was a study which came in AJC in 2010 which basically looked into the timing of IABP insertion and its outcome. And you can see here you had a group where insertion was done before PCI and another group where insertion was done after PCI. And you can see in hospital death definitely lower if you are using it before PCI. But in shock 2 trial it was more than 85% was used after PCI. And if they looked into predictors of in-hospital outcome, again they found that IABP support after PCI was a bad predictor along with renal failure, two biggest adverse prediction for patients who are having adverse outcome in this subgroup of patients. So this recommendation also said the use of an IABP is recommended only in presence of hemodynamic impairment and IABP should be inserted before angiography in patient with hemodynamic instability. So now let us look at the two of the latest guidelines, how they tell us, what they tell us. The ACC guideline which came in 2002 had put IABP in class 2A IABP counterpulsation can be useful for patients with shock after STMI who do not quickly stabilize with pharmacological therapy. European guideline, they are little more stringent. They have put IABP as class 2B. So in conclusion my talk, I will tell that IABP should be used in MI with cardiogenic shock because we don't have any other device which fares better than what it is. The PROTECTO trial with Impella comparing IABP and Impella was also a negative. It did not show Impella is much superior than IABP. So we should continue to use in hemodynamic unstable patient. And one more thing is we should insert it before starting the procedure. And in other high risk category like severe LV dysfunction, large infarct, data is not enough. Hence I leave it to your judgment to decide who has the potential to deteriorate, and in those patients we can definitely use it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Purohit. Any questions from the audience you would like to ask? I have one question for you, Dr. Purohit. Now, you know, we have done in Chennai, we are using ECMO for the cardiogenic shock cases. So, we have done one tried study in the emergency room. Like which cases, as you mentioned, should be put on IABP before PCA? How early? So, there are some kind of indicators like patients who comes to the emergency room, if they have, of course, severe hypotension, intractable, or if they have acidosis, that is pH hovering between 7.2 around that figure, or LVF in the emergency room, they should be put on IABP early, even before shifting to the cath lab. So what is your opinion? What do you think it should be considered in all, like as a rule, considering that the American College has put it as a 2B kind of criteria or protocol?
No, because of the result of this shock 2 trial, probably the use has been downgraded to class 2B. But as I said, the long-term data has still not come. That is 6 months or more than 1 year data has not come. Regarding the use of IABP, there is no controversy. We should use it as early as possible, if possible before starting PCI. If someone is doing a PCI in a cardiogenic shock situation where he feels he is not experienced in using an IABP and he wants to go ahead with the PCI, then I cannot say anything. But there was a concern that probably when you use IABP, probably you are delaying the PCI. But that has not been found to be used because it takes around 5 to 10 minutes to insert a IABP in a patient, which does not really make too much of a difference. And in this trial which came out, which definitely showed that use of IABP before even doing an angiography, it has helped the patient, improves their hemodynamics and led to a better outcome in these patients. So if we are having a patient who has a cardiogenic shock, then definitely we should use IABP in these patients, and we should preferably put it before doing even an angiography.
Thank you, thank you.
The data with ECMO and LVADs are still not very, very robust. So still they are in class 2B indication right now.